Before we dive into this journey of transformation, I have one small request. If you believe in stories that touch the soul, stories that remind us what truly matters in this chaotic world, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Your support helps us bring you more life-changing stories like this one. It's free, it takes just a second, and it means the world to us. And I'm curious, where are you watching from right now? New York? London? Mumbai? Tokyo? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Let's see how far this story reaches across the globe. Now, let me take you into the world of Ethan Cole. Ethan Cole had forgotten what rejection felt like. Not because he lived in denial, but because in his 32 years on this earth, he genuinely couldn't remember the last time someone had said no to him. Not in business. Not in love. Not in life. He was the kind of man who commanded attention without demanding it. 6'2", with the kind of quiet confidence that made heads turn before he even opened his mouth. Dark hair that looked effortlessly styled even when it wasn't. Eyes that held yours just a moment longer than comfortable, not aggressive, but present, intensely present. Women smiled at him first. Always. Conversations bent toward him like flowers seeking sunlight. Doors, literal and metaphorical, opened without him needing to knock. His presence alone was currency in the social economy of desire and admiration. But here's what they didn't tell you about always winning: eventually, you forget what the game even is. Ethan had built an empire by the age of 28. As the youngest CEO of Meridian Capital, one of the fastest-growing investment firms on the East Coast, his name appeared in boardrooms and business magazines with almost boring regularity. Billionaire. Visionary. The golden boy of Wall Street's new generation. Yet standing in line at a small neighborhood coffee shop on an ordinary Tuesday morning, dressed in a worn leather jacket and scuffed sneakers, Ethan Cole looked like nobody special at all. And that was exactly the point. Chapter 2, 2 words that changed everything. The coffee shop was the kind of place that exists in every city but belongs to none of them. Exposed brick walls covered in local art. The persistent smell of burnt espresso mixing with cinnamon pastries. A chalkboard menu with prices that made you wonder how they stayed in business. It was real. Unglamorous. Honest. Ethan had been coming here for 3 weeks as part of what he privately called the experiment. No driver dropping him off. No tailored Tom Ford suits. No assistant whispering reminders in his wireless earpiece. Just him, anonymous and ordinary, testing a theory that had been gnawing at him for months. Who would value him when there was nothing to gain? The line moved slowly. Morning rush. People buried in their phones, already stressed about meetings they were late for, problems they couldn't solve, lives they weren't sure they wanted. When Ethan reached the counter, she was there. She didn't look up immediately, focused on making change, wiping the counter with mechanical efficiency. When her eyes finally met his, there was no spark of recognition, no flash of interest. Just the practiced neutrality of someone who had served 1,000 customers and would serve 1,000 more. She was pretty in an understated way. Hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup that he could detect. Early 30s, maybe. Tired eyes that held something deeper than exhaustion, a kind of quiet determination. "What can I get you?" Her voice was pleasant but not warm. Professional but not inviting. "Medium coffee, black," Ethan said, adding what usually worked, his smile. The one that had closed million-dollar deals and opened countless doors. "And maybe, your recommendation on the pastries?" He leaned forward slightly, creating intimacy in the crowded space. She didn't lean in. She stepped back. "The croissants are fresh," she said simply, already reaching for a cup. $3.50 for the coffee. $2.25 for the croissant. Ethan paid, then tried again. "You know, I've been coming here for a while now. I don't think I've properly introduced myself." That'll be $5.75, she interrupted gently, sliding his coffee across the counter. He blinked. Set his bills down. Tried once more, softer this time, maybe sometime I could. No, thank you. 2 words. Polite. Gentle. Absolutely final. She said it without malice, without judgment, without any emotional charge whatsoever. Just a boundary, clearly stated, firmly held. Then she turned to the next customer, and Ethan became invisible. He stood there longer than he should have, paper cup cooling in his hand, mind utterly blank. For the first time in over a decade, Ethan Cole had been dismissed. Not rejected with reluctance. Not turned down with regret. Simply, dismissed. As if he were any other man. As if his presence held no particular weight. As if he didn't matter. The bell above the door chimed softly as Ethan stepped back out onto the busy sidewalk, and that simple sound seemed to wake him from a trance. He walked slowly, coffee forgotten in his hand, mind spinning. What just happened? Around him, the city pulsed with its usual chaos, car horns, construction noise, the murmur of a million conversations happening simultaneously. But inside his head, there was only silence and one question repeating like a drumbeat. Why? Not why did she reject him? That wasn't the puzzle. The puzzle was how easily she had done it. No hesitation. No second thoughts. No awareness that she had just done something no woman had done to him in years. Ethan Cole was not a stupid man. He had always known, on some level, that his success created a gravitational pull. Money changed things. Power changed things. The moment people knew who he was, their behavior shifted, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically, but always noticeably. That was why, 6 months ago, standing alone in his penthouse apartment overlooking Manhattan, he had made a decision. He needed to know the truth. Not the truth people told billionaires. Not the truth people told powerful men. The real truth, who would value him when there was nothing to gain. The experiment had begun simply. He stopped wearing his custom suits, locked away his Patek Philippe watches, took the subway instead of his car service. He told his board he needed space to think, which was partially true. He moved into a modest apartment in Brooklyn under a different name. When people asked what he did, he said he was between opportunities, figuring things out. The vagueness usually killed conversations quickly, which was the point. For 6 months, he had been living as a ghost of his former self. And the results had been educational. Old acquaintances who used to text constantly went silent when he stopped responding from his penthouse address. Invitations dried up. Phone calls became rare. People who had sworn they valued his friendship vanished the moment his usefulness did. It should have hurt. Instead, it fascinated him. He began cataloging reactions. Who stayed kind when there was nothing to gain? Who listened when there was no leverage to extract? Who offered help without expecting return? Most people failed quickly. They became distant, polite but cold, their smiles thinner, their attention elsewhere. But some passed. The elderly neighbor who invited him for dinner without knowing anything about him. The bookstore owner who recommended novels based on careful observation of what he browsed. People who gave freely without calculating value. And now, this woman, Lena, he would later learn, had done something even more interesting. She hadn't failed his test. She had refused to take it at all. That night, Ethan sat in his modest Brooklyn apartment, a far cry from his Manhattan penthouse, and stared at his reflection in the window. Who was he, really, without the armor of wealth? He had spent so many years being Ethan Cole, the billionaire, the CEO, the man whose name carried weight, that he had forgotten how to just be Ethan. A person. Flawed, uncertain, searching. His childhood had taught him early, vulnerability was weakness, and weakness was exploitation. His father had been a mid-level executive who smiled at bosses and barked at subordinates. His mother had married for security and spent 30 years regretting it. He watched them dance around each other, trading affection for advantage, love for leverage. By 13, Ethan understood the unspoken rules. People didn't want you, they wanted what you could provide. Friendship was conditional. Love was transactional. Everything had a price, even if no one said it aloud. So he made himself valuable. Top of his class. Star athlete. The charismatic leader everyone wanted on their team. By the time he built his first startup at 24 and sold it for $40 million at 26, he had perfected the art of being wanted. But somewhere along the way, being wanted had replaced being known. Every relationship followed the same pattern. Initial interest, growing attachment, inevitable disappointment when they realized he would never fully let them in. He told himself he preferred it that way, clean, controlled, painless. But the truth, the one he avoided in the hollow 3 a.m. hours, was simpler and more devastating. Ethan no longer trusted the yes. Every smile felt rehearsed. Every compliment sounded purchased. Every "I love you" carried the silent weight of "I love what you can give me." So when this woman, this barista in a worn apron, with tired eyes and calloused hands, had said no, without hesitation, without calculation, without any awareness of what she was turning down. It was the most honest thing anyone had said to him in years. And Ethan Cole, the man who had built an empire on certainty, suddenly found himself facing something he couldn't buy, negotiate, or control. Genuine indifference. She didn't want anything from him because she didn't know there was anything to want. And more unsettling still, even if she had known, he suspected her answer would have been exactly the same. 2 words. No, thank you. They followed him into sleep that night and were waiting when he woke. For the first time in his carefully constructed life, Ethan Cole felt something he had spent decades avoiding. Genuine curiosity about another human being. Not as a conquest. Not as a test subject. But as a mystery he desperately wanted to understand. Who was she? What made her so certain? What gave her the strength to hold boundaries in a world that rewarded their absence? And most dangerous of all, could she see something in him worth knowing, even without the armor of wealth? As dawn broke over Brooklyn, Ethan made a decision. He would return to that coffee shop. Not as the billionaire. Not as the test giver. But as the man she had already seen and dismissed. If she said no again, at least he would understand why. And if she didn't? Ethan didn't let himself finish that thought. For the first time in years, the outcome was uncertain. And that uncertainty felt like waking up after a very long sleep. The next morning, Ethan stood outside the coffee shop for a full 3 minutes before going in. This felt different. The first time had been an accident, a spontaneous test, a social experiment. This was a choice. He was choosing to walk back into rejection, choosing to remain invisible, choosing to see what existed on the other side of certainty. His hand trembled slightly on the door handle. Ethan Cole, who had pitched to venture capitalists without breaking a sweat, who had fired executives without flinching, who had negotiated billion-dollar deals with ice in his veins, was nervous about ordering coffee. The irony wasn't lost on him. Inside, the morning rush was in full swing. The shop was packed with people who looked like he used to feel, important, hurried, existing in a world where their time was currency and everyone else was just an obstacle. She was there, behind the counter, moving with that same efficient grace. Hair pulled back again. Different apron, same quiet determination in her eyes. Ethan joined the line, heart pounding stupidly in his chest. When his turn came, she looked up, and for a split second, he saw something flicker across her face. Recognition, maybe. Or just the vague familiarity of a repeated customer. It passed quickly. "Medium coffee, black," he said. Not a question this time. Just an order. She nodded, reached for a cup, and turned away. No small talk. No acknowledgement of yesterday's rejection. It was as if it had never happened. Ethan paid in exact change this time, counting the bills and coins carefully. When she slid the coffee across the counter, he hesitated, then said, "Do you ever slow down in here?" The question surprised her. He could see it in the slight pause before she answered. Her eyes flicked to the line behind him, calculating, then back to his face. "Only after closing," she said. "People still need their coffee." That was it. No invitation. No opening. Just a simple fact. Ethan nodded, stepping aside to let the next customer through. He found a seat in the corner, the one with the wobbly leg that nobody wanted, and sat down with his coffee cooling between his palms. And he watched. Over the next week, Ethan developed a routine he didn't acknowledge to himself. Every morning at 7:47 a.m., he would enter the coffee shop. Medium coffee, black. Exact change. A few words exchanged, rarely more. Then he would sit in the corner with the wobbly table and watch the world move around him. But mostly, he watched her. Lena. He learned her name the way he learned everything about her, quietly, without asking. A regular customer called it out in thanks, and she nodded once, already moving on to the next order. She never filled silence to make people comfortable. She let it exist, heavy and real. In Ethan's world of cocktail party chatter and networking small talk, her comfort with silence felt radical. He began to notice patterns. She wiped the counter twice in the same spot, every time, as if fighting invisible dirt only she could see. She straightened the crooked sugar jar compulsively. Customers would knock at askew, and within minutes, she'd set it right again without seeming to notice she was doing it. But what struck him most were the small acts of kindness that had no audience. An elderly man came in one morning, fumbling with coins, hands shaking with age or cold or both. He dropped a quarter, and it rolled under the register. He started to bend down, slowly, painfully, and before Ethan could move, Lena had left the counter and was kneeling beside him, retrieving the coin and pressing it into his palm with a warmth that transformed her face. "Don't worry about it, Mr. Chen," she said softly. "Coffee's on the house today. Consider it back payment for all the times you've been patient with me." The old man's eyes glistened. He tried to protest, but she was already ringing up the next customer, the moment already over. No one else had noticed. There was no social media post, no performance of virtue. Just kindness, given freely, because that's who she was when no one was watching. Ethan sat in his corner, coffee forgotten, something tight and uncomfortable lodging in his chest, conversations in the margins. By the end of the second week, Lena had stopped being surprised by his presence. She didn't warm to him exactly, but she stopped treating him like a complete stranger. When the morning rush died down and she had a moment to breathe, she would catch his eye across the shop and nod, a small acknowledgement that they shared this space. One afternoon, when rain hammered against the windows and the usual crowd had thinned to almost nothing, Ethan stayed longer than usual. He had nowhere else to be. His actual life, the penthouse, the meetings, the empire, felt like something happening to someone else, somewhere far away. Lena was wiping down tables, moving methodically through the empty shop. When she reached his table, she paused. "You're not in a hurry," she said. Not a question. An observation. "No," Ethan replied. "I'm not." She studied him for a moment, and he felt truly seen for the first time in years. Not assessed for value. Not measured for advantage. Just, seen. "Then sit," she said finally. "But don't expect me to entertain you." He smiled. "Wouldn't dream of it." She almost smiled back. Almost. Then she turned away to continue her work, and Ethan realized something crucial. He had just been given permission. Not to pursue her. Not to impress her. simply to exist in her space without expectation. It was the most honest gift anyone had given him in years. The weight she carries. Ethan learned about Lena's life the way rain fills a bucket, drop by drop, gradually, without force. She mentioned an early shift because someone had called in sick. A missed dinner because overtime paid better than apologies. A phone call she stepped outside to take, her voice low, shoulders tense with responsibility that seemed to follow her everywhere. One evening, as the shop was closing and golden hour light streamed through the windows, Ethan helped her stack chairs on tables without asking if she wanted help. She watched him for a moment, then nodded and continued working. "You don't have to do this," she said. "I know," he replied. "I want to." She paused, hand on a chair back, and looked at him directly. "Then do it because you choose to, not because you expect something back." The words hit him like a physical thing. Because wasn't that exactly what he had been doing his entire life? Every gesture calculated. Every kindness an investment. Every relationship a transaction he never wrote down but always kept score of. "I'll try," he said quietly. She nodded, satisfied, and they finished in silence. As they worked, Ethan noticed things that didn't fit the simple narrative he'd constructed. The way she flinched when a car backfired outside. The medical bill that slipped from her apron pocket, quickly stuffed back. The careful way she counted her tips, twice, before putting them away. She wasn't just independent. She was surviving. And she was doing it with a grace and dignity that made his carefully constructed experiment feel suddenly, sickeningly trivial. The boundary. 3 weeks in, Ethan made a mistake. It was a Saturday morning, unusually slow. Lena was restocking cups, and he was sitting in his usual corner, reading a book he wasn't actually reading. "Can I ask you something?" he said, the question escaping before wisdom could stop it. She turned, waited. "Would you, maybe want to grab dinner sometime? Nothing fancy. Just, dinner." The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Lena set down the cups carefully, wiped her hands on her apron, and walked over to his table. She didn't sit. Just stood there, looking down at him with those tired, knowing eyes. "No," she said. Not unkindly. Just clearly. "Not like that." Ethan felt his face heat. "I didn't mean." "Yes, you did," she interrupted gently. "And I appreciate the honesty. But no. Can I ask why?" She was quiet for a long moment, considering whether he deserved an explanation. Finally, she spoke. "Because I've met men like you before. Not exactly like you, maybe, but the type. Guys who come into places like this looking for something real, something authentic, because everything else in their life feels fake. And they think someone like me, someone who works with their hands, someone struggling, someone uncomplicated, they think we're the answer." Her voice wasn't bitter. Just tired. "But we're not simple," she continued. "We're not uncomplicated. We're just tired. And we don't have the energy to be someone's enlightenment project." The words landed like hammer blows. Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it. What could he possibly say? She had seen right through him, past the worn jacket and scuffed shoes, straight to the truth he'd been avoiding. He had been using her. Not for sex or status, but for something perhaps more selfish, for validation. For proof that he could be valued without his wealth. "You're right," he said finally, voice rough. "I'm sorry." She nodded once. "I appreciate that." She turned to walk away, then paused. "For what it's worth, I don't think you're a bad person. I just think you're looking for something I can't give you." "What's that?" Ethan asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. "Permission to be someone different than who you've been." Lena looked at him with something that might have been compassion. "The thing is? You don't need my permission. You never did." You just need to decide who you want to be and start being it. The rest is just noise. Then she walked away, leaving Ethan sitting alone with a cold cup of coffee and the most honest words anyone had spoken to him in his entire adult life. For 3 days, Ethan didn't return to the coffee shop. He told himself he was giving her space, respecting her boundaries. But the truth was simpler and more painful. He was ashamed. She had seen through him completely. All his carefully constructed tests, his philosophical experiment, his search for authenticity, it was all just another form of control. Another way of keeping the world at arm's length while pretending to engage with it. He sat in his modest Brooklyn apartment, staring at walls that felt like they were closing in, and for the first time in 6 months, he checked his work email. 3,847 unread messages. His assistant had been handling everything, but decisions were piling up. The board wanted answers. Investors had questions. His empire, it turned out, could not run on autopilot indefinitely. Ethan could end the experiment tomorrow. Walk back into his penthouse, reclaim his life, forget about the coffee shop and the woman who had seen him too clearly. It would be easy. But as he sat there in the growing darkness, watching the city lights flicker on across the river, he realized something that terrified him. He didn't want easy anymore. For 32 years, Ethan Cole had chosen the path of least resistance emotionally. Build walls. Maintain control. Never let anyone close enough to hurt you. And he had succeeded brilliantly. He had everything: money, power, success, admiration. And he had nothing. No one who knew him. No one he trusted. No relationship that wasn't transactional at its core. Lena had been right. He had been looking for permission to be different. But the permission didn't come from her or anyone else. It came from him. The question was, did he have the courage to actually change? Not perform change. Not experiment with it. But actually, fundamentally, terrifyingly change who he was. On the 4th day, Ethan went back to the coffee shop. But this time, he came with something he rarely brought anywhere: honesty. Lena was there, restocking the pastry case. When she saw him, her expression didn't change, not cold, not warm, just neutral acknowledgement. "Medium coffee, black?" she asked. "Actually," Ethan said, "I came to apologize." "Properly." She raised an eyebrow, closed the pastry case, and waited. "You were right," he continued. "About all of it. I was using you, just not in the way I pretended I wasn't. I was looking for someone to validate that I could be worth knowing without my usual advantages. And that wasn't fair to you." Lena leaned against the counter, arms crossed, listening. "But what you said about permission," Ethan continued, his voice quieter now. "That stuck with me. You're right. I've been waiting for someone else to tell me it's okay to be different. When the truth is, I'm the only one who can make that choice." "So what are you choosing?" Lena asked. It was the most important question anyone had ever asked him. Ethan took a breath. "I'm choosing to be honest. With you, with myself, with everyone. Even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable." "That's a nice speech," Lena said, not unkindly. "But speeches are easy. Actions are hard." "I know," Ethan said. "So I'm not asking for anything. Not dinner, not friendship, not forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that what you said mattered. That you mattered. That you changed something in me, whether you meant to or not." For a long moment, Lena was silent, studying him with those tired, wise eyes. Then she poured a cup of coffee, slid it across the counter, and said, "This one's on the house. Not because I forgive you, there's nothing to forgive. But because I think maybe, for the first time since you've been coming here, you're actually being real." Ethan took the coffee, hands wrapping around the warm cup. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Lena said, a hint of a smile touching her lips. Being real is harder than being perfect. You might not like what you find. I'm counting on it, Ethan replied. And for the first time in weeks, Lena smiled at him. Really smiled. Small, cautious, but real. It was the most valuable thing anyone had ever given him. For 6 more weeks, Ethan returned to the coffee shop. Not every day, Lena had taught him that presence without pressure was respect. But regularly. Consistently. Honestly. They talked more now. Small conversations about real things. She told him about the grandmother she was caring for, whose medical bills were drowning her slowly. About the nursing degree she'd abandoned when her parents died. About the coffee shop that was supposed to be temporary 5 years ago. He told her about feeling invisible in his own life. About relationships that felt like performances. About the fear that if people knew the real him, not the successful him, not the powerful him, just him, they would find nothing worth knowing. That's the problem with armor, Lena said one evening as they cleaned the shop together. It had become their routine, Ethan helping close up, their conversations flowing in the quiet after the rush. It protects you from getting hurt, but it also stops you from being touched. She said it casually, wiping down a table, not realizing she had just articulated the central tragedy of his entire life. Ethan felt something crack inside his chest. I've been wearing armor so long, he said quietly, I'm not sure there's anything underneath anymore. Lena stopped wiping, turned to look at him. There is, she said with certainty. The fact that you're worried about it proves there is. It was the closest thing to tenderness she had shown him, and it undid him completely. Everything ended on a Wednesday afternoon. Ethan was at the coffee shop, sitting in his usual corner, reading a book Lena had recommended, something about finding meaning in suffering. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. Finally, he looked. 15 missed calls. All from his assistant. His blood went cold. He stepped outside, hands shaking as he called back. Thank God, his assistant breathed. Mr. Cole, we have a situation. The SEC investigation, someone leaked documents. It's hitting the news in an hour. They have your name, your photo, everything. Sir, you need to get to the office. Now. The world tilted. Not the investigation, that was manufactured nonsense by a competitor, would be resolved within weeks. But the exposure. The revelation of who he really was. Lena would see his face on the news tonight. Ethan Cole, billionaire CEO. The man who had pretended to be nobody, who had lied by omission for months, who had tested her without her knowledge or consent. He had 30 minutes before his world exploded into hers. Ethan stood on the sidewalk, mind racing through options. He could disappear. Ghost her. She would see the news, realize he had lied, and that would be that. Clean. Simple. Cowardly. Or he could go back inside and tell her the truth himself. Every instinct he had honed over 32 years screamed at him to run. To protect himself. To maintain control. But then he thought about Lena wiping that counter, straightening that sugar jar, helping that elderly man. He thought about her boundaries and her honesty and her exhausted refusal to be anything less than real. And he realized, she had never asked him to be perfect. She had only ever asked him to be honest. Ethan walked back into the coffee shop. Lena, he said, voice rough. I need to talk to you. Now. Please. Something in his tone made her put down the cup she was holding. The shop was empty, that strange mid-afternoon lull. She came around the counter, worry creasing her forehead. What's wrong? I've been lying to you, Ethan said. Not about everything. Not about the things that matter. But about who I am. What I do. Why I'm really here. She took a small step back. Okay. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm the CEO of Meridian Capital. I'm a billionaire. For the past 6 months, I've been pretending to be someone else, living a different life, because I wanted to know who would value me without my money. It was a test. An experiment. And you were part of it without knowing. The words tumbled out, graceless and desperate. In about 20 minutes, my face is going to be all over the news because of some business thing. And I couldn't let you find out that way. I couldn't let you think that everything I've said to you, everything we've shared, was part of the lie. Lena stared at him, face unreadable. The money is real, he continued, panic rising. The power is real. But everything else, my feelings, my words, my respect for you, that's real too. More real than anything else in my life. You saw me, Lena. The real me. Not the version with the armor. And I need you to know that person was real. Silence. Lena's face had gone very still, very closed. So, she said finally, voice carefully controlled, for 6 months, you've been playing poor? Slumming it in my world? Testing the peasants to see if they're virtuous enough when they don't know they're being tested? No, Ethan said desperately. Yes. I don't know. It started that way, but it became something else. You became something else. What did I become, Ethan? Her voice was cold now. Your redemption story? Your proof that you're secretly a good person underneath all that money? My wake-up call, he said simply. You showed me that I've been living a hollow life. That I've been so afraid of being used that I stopped letting anyone in. That I've been testing everyone because I don't trust anyone, including myself. Lena laughed, but there was no humor in it. And you thought lying to me was the way to build trust? I thought, Ethan said, voice breaking, that if someone could value me without the money, then maybe I was worth something beyond it. But I was wrong. Not because the test was invalid, but because you can't find authenticity through deception. You can't build something real on a foundation of lies. He took a shaky breath. You were right, that day you turned me down. I was looking for permission to be different. But what I didn't understand then was that being different doesn't mean pretending to be someone else. It means having the courage to be who you actually are, wealth and all, and letting people decide if that person is worth knowing. Tears were streaming down his face now, and he didn't care. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said. I'm not asking for another chance. I'm just asking you to know that meeting you changed me. Really changed me. And whatever happens next, whatever you decide, I'm going to be different because of it. I'm going to stop hiding. Stop testing. Start trusting. Because you taught me that the risk of being real is worth it, even if it means being rejected for who you truly are. Lena was crying too now, though her face was still hard. You should go, she whispered. Lena. Go, Ethan. Please. He went. The next 3 weeks were the longest of Ethan Cole's life. He returned to his penthouse, his suits, his empire. The SEC investigation was resolved quickly, as expected. His photo cycled through the news for 48 hours, then was replaced by the next scandal. But nothing felt the same. His assistant noticed it first. The way he paused before making decisions, considering not just profit but impact. The way he started asking employees about their lives, really listening to their answers. The way he donated anonymously to causes he'd never cared about before. Are you okay, sir? His assistant finally asked. Ethan looked up from the medical debt charity application he was funding, the same hospital where Lena's grandmother was being treated. I'm becoming okay, he said. For the first time in my life, I'm becoming okay. He didn't go back to the coffee shop. He wanted to, God, how he wanted to, but he had finally learned what respect meant. It meant honoring someone's no. It meant not pushing when told to step back. It meant letting go, even when everything in you screamed to hold on. But he thought about her constantly. Wondered if she was okay. Hoped she didn't hate him. Hoped, against all reason, that maybe someday. No. That was the old Ethan, always calculating odds, always planning angles. The new Ethan simply hoped she was happy. That was enough. It had to be enough. 3 months later. Ethan was leaving a board meeting when he saw her. She was standing in the lobby of his building, looking impossibly small among the marble and glass and steel. She wore the same tired expression, but something was different. She looked lighter somehow. Their eyes met across the cavernous space. Ethan's heart stopped. He walked toward her slowly, afraid she would disappear if he moved too fast, like a dream disrupted by waking. "Hi," he said when he reached her. The most inadequate word in the English language. "Hi," she replied. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence they had learned to share, back when he was nobody and she was just a barista and everything was simpler and more complicated. "You paid my grandmother's medical bills," Lena said finally. "All of them. And you set up a trust fund for her care." Ethan shook his head. "That was anonymous." "Rich people always think anonymous means invisible," Lena said, but there was a ghost of a smile on her lips. "You're not as subtle as you think." "I'm learning that," Ethan admitted. More silence. "Why did you come here?" Ethan asked, terrified of the answer. Lena looked down at her hands, then back up at him. "Because I've been angry at you for 3 months. And then I realized something. I've been angry because you lied. But I've also been angry because you told the truth." "I don't understand," Ethan said softly. "You lied about who you were," Lena explained. "But you told the truth about who you wanted to be. And I've been mad at you for not being perfect when all I've ever asked of anyone is that they be honest. That they try. That they fail and keep trying anyway." Her eyes were wet now. "You hurt me," she said. "You tested me without my consent. You made me part of your journey without asking. That was wrong." "I know," Ethan said. "I'm so sorry, Lena. She held up a hand. "Let me finish. You did something wrong. But you also did something brave. You told me the truth when you could have walked away. You changed who you were, even though it was hard. You've been different, apparently, in ways that even strangers notice." She took a breath. "I'm not here to give you another chance. I'm here to see if you want to start something new. Not a redemption story. Not a test. Just 2 people, being honest about who they are, seeing if there's something real underneath all the fear and armor." Ethan felt tears on his face again. He seemed to cry more now than he had in decades. "I would like that," he said, voice breaking. "More than anything." "There are conditions," Lena said, and now she was definitely smiling. "No more tests. No more experiments. No pretending to be someone you're not, rich or poor. Just you, whoever that is. Figuring it out. Making mistakes. Being human." "I can do that," Ethan said. "I want to do that." "And," Lena continued, "you have to let me be a person too, not a teacher or a savior or whatever you built me up to be in your head. I'm just a woman who works too hard, worries too much, and is scared of being hurt. I'm not wise. I'm just tired. But maybe we can figure it out together." "Yes," Ethan said. "Please, yes." Lena stepped forward and took his hand. Her palm was rough with work, warm with life. "This won't be easy," she warned. "I know," Ethan said. "You're going to mess up. I'm going to mess up. We're going to hurt each other without meaning to. I know. But if you're willing to be real with me, really, truly real, then I'm willing to try being real with you. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. I've never done this before. The being real part, I mean. Lena smiled, that real smile he'd only seen a handful of times. Neither have I, she said. So we'll learn together. And standing there in the lobby of his building, surrounded by the trappings of his empire, Ethan Cole finally understood something that had eluded him for 32 years. Being wanted was easy. Being known was terrifying. But being known and wanted anyway, for exactly who you are, flaws and all, that was everything. Can I take you to dinner? He asked. Not somewhere fancy. Somewhere honest. I know a place, Lena said. Terrible coffee, but they mean well. They walked out together, hand in hand, into the chaos of the city. Ethan Cole, the billionaire who had everything. And Lena, the woman who had taught him that everything meant nothing without someone real to share it with. The story of what happened next, the arguments and reconciliations, the fumbling attempts at intimacy, the slow building of trust, that's a different story. This one ends here, in the moment before the hard work begins. In the moment when two people decide that being real is worth the risk of being hurt. In the moment when a man who never heard no finally understood what yes really meant. The coffee shop was closed. Not shut down, transformed. Same location, same exposed brick, same crooked sugar jar on the counter. But now it was managed differently. Better wages for the staff. Benefits. Reasonable hours. And above the door, in simple letters, Lena's place. Inside, at a corner table with a repaired leg, Ethan and Lena sat with their laptops, working in comfortable silence. He was reviewing investment proposals, but now he asked different questions. Who benefits? What impact? What's the human cost? She was back in school, finishing her nursing degree. It was hard, exhausting, and she loved it. They didn't live together yet. They were taking it slow, learning each other in daylight, not just in the romance of the evening. Learning to be fully themselves, her with her boundaries and exhaustion, him with his privilege and learning curve. It wasn't perfect. They fought about money, about responsibility, about his instinct to fix things and her need for autonomy. They were learning that love wasn't about completion, it was about companionship in incompletion. But it was real. And every morning, Lena still made him a medium coffee, black. And every morning, Ethan still marveled that she chose him. Not because he never heard no anymore, he heard it plenty, from her and others, and he was learning to respect it, even welcome it. But because when she said yes, he knew it meant something. Life lesson, the courage to be known. The story of Ethan and Lena teaches us something profound. We live in a world that rewards performance over presence, image over authenticity, success over significance. We build walls to protect ourselves from being hurt, and in doing so, we prevent ourselves from being truly known. Ethan Cole had everything money could buy, but he was empty because he had never allowed anyone to see him without his armor. Lena had almost nothing in material terms, but she was whole because she knew exactly who she was and refused to compromise it.